everyone. Welcome to Imperfect Progress. This is a special episode with my dear therapist. Her name is Janelle. She's fabulous. She, yes, is a therapist, but she's also so much more. She is an author, she is an artist, she is a mother. She's curious and she's honest and a little bit sassy. So it's no wonder that we get along so well. Janelle and I met about 4 years ago when I got randomly assigned to her caseload. And, there have been a few on and off moments, but for the most part, we've been through a lot together. So she's definitely been the one encouraging me the most, I think, to share my experiences, things I've learned, um, and big dream pursuits like this podcast or writing a book. So meet my number one fan and helper, Janelle James.
Yay! Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. I had to grapple with it because I'm like, well, I don't even know if I'm allowed to do this, but you've invited me. And so I think that's the permission that I needed. And I love just the idea that you are exploring a therapist's brain. Like that's really cool to me because we never really get a chance to talk about that stuff. So thank you for having me.
Yes. Yes, I'm so glad that you were here because I really the point of this podcast, I want to explore like all different kinds of people's journeys.
Yeah.
And we often don't think about the people who are helping us through our own journey,
Right.
because they're people too with lives and struggles and
Mm.
joys and everything. And honestly, I feel like some of your experiences and lessons learned and things that you've been growing throughout your whole life have then become things that you reflect into your practice and have helped me. So I just thought this would be a very cool idea.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think it is too. I think I'm probably a little more transparent than maybe some therapists and that just works for me. I think I've kind of not perfected but really honed the skill of using self-disclosure is what we call it, um, in a way that's helpful and really try to rein it in or refrain when it feels like it's too much. I never want the scale to tip over to where we're talking about my stuff, but I think it's really important for people to know that we are humans and we have experiences, and I do believe like whatever we go through we can use to help other people. So yeah, that's kind of my
Yes,
motivation behind that.
I love that. I That's definitely something I appreciate and admire about you, and I think that has also helped me, I don't know, have courage to talk about some of my own things in a more public forum as well. So, let's start with some
All
questions.
right.
Um, okay, so when did you start your work as a therapist? Like, what drew you to it?
So I went to school to be an art teacher, actually, my first life.
Okay.
Yeah, right out of high school, I went to college and I went for 2 years. And then I met Prince Charming and fell in love and had babies, and everything else went by the wayside. And so, fast forward a few years, and I decided to go back to school. I was working in a administrative assistant position, and it kind of collaborated with a sales floor. So I was filling in on the sales floor, and a little old lady came in and asked me what I was doing with my life. She was buying toilet paper, and she asked me at the end of that sales, like, "What are you doing with your life?" And I'm like, "Excuse me, what do you mean?" So she said, "Where are you going to be in 5 years?" She was Hispanic and she had this thick accent. And I was like, I don't know. I guess I'm going to be here. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be here. So that whole experience just sent me on, and I never saw her again. I don't know who she was, but she's my little angel because
Oh,
she really helped me break out of this mundane life and really go for what I feel like I was born to do, like what my purpose is. And so I went down this path and I was trying to figure out how do you take like an unfinished art degree and apply it to something else because I knew I didn't want to work with large groups of children. I just didn't think that was, I didn't have that in me. So I became a family life education major. And most people are like, what is that? And
Yeah,
it was
I would
a,
ask the same question.
yeah, exactly. It was a bachelor degree that was through Spring Arbor University, and I could go to school at night and on the weekends because I had a family. And so I got this degree, and it was basically kind of like a social worky degree. I couldn't I couldn't get a job afterwards, and so I decided that I wanted to keep going. So I enrolled in the Masters of Counseling, and so that kind of became my journey. I have been helping people ever since middle school, or probably elementary school. Like I can think back and I remembered like sitting down with my friends who are fighting, and I'm like, guys, this isn't what we do. We got to be nice to each other. We need to work it out
You were
now.
just a natural mediator.
Susie, I want you to explain your feelings and tell Barbie what she needs to know, like just totally always been doing this. And so it's kind of a fun way to see it for come to fruition years later. So I've been doing this since 2008 is when I graduated. So long time. I mean, not as long as some people, some people have been doing this for 30 and 40 years, but um, it's been a really fun journey.
Yeah. That's so cool to me how there can be pieces throughout like our childhood
Yeah.
that pop up in unexpected ways when we're adults.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you say that about how you were, I don't know, like the counselor of your friend groups and different things. And then, not even thinking that that was going to be the path that you'd end up on. And here you are. And it's a gift because you excel at it.
Oh,
So
thank you.
very, very interesting. So 2008 to now,
Mhm.
are there any major shifts in your thinking about counseling or your practices, the ways you think about healing that are different from how you started to now?
Oh, so much is different. Um, I think the most important fundamental difference is that I started this journey of being a counselor with a very codependent perspective. Like it's my job to fix people. Not in
Mm,
a haughty, arrogant way, but just like this is my assignment in life. I need to fix
yes.
everyone and help everyone. And I think I've realized, not I think, I know that I have realized and developed a way healthier perspective over the years. I was calculating today, I think it's like 17 years or something like that. And so over the last 17 years, I've really grown as an individual, which is reflected in my practice. And so
Mhm,
just really understanding that I can't work harder than other people at their life, and some people don't want help, and that's okay. Some people's idea of progress is way, way, way slower than mine, and that's okay. And just learning how to meet people where they're at. I also started my career as an intern and then moved into the director of counseling at this place at a Christian recovery program. And that's kind of morphed and changed for me too, because back then it was, in the drug world and the addiction world, in that culture that I was started out in, it was very much a spiritual problem. And
mhm,
I also realized that, that is not accurate. It's
mhm,
can't there's an aspect to that, but it's also a medical problem, a biological problem, a systemic problem, a cultural problem, a trauma problem. And so there was
mhm,
just not that framework to work from back then for me. So that's really developed, understanding that all comes from trauma, a lot more understanding and grace and compassion towards people. Not just, pray that away and you'll be fine. Pray harder, go to church more.
yes.
That's not accurate. And so, yeah, that's probably the biggest shift, is understanding codependency better and recovering from that myself. And then also just a better understanding of how people get into the positions they're in.
Mhm. Yeah, and those are both topics that we've talked about before in general and also just related to, my journey and your journey. I think we both, because of the very similar culture that we were raised in and, became young adults in, we had this very missional perspective about our lives. Um, and there's kind of a difference, between having like a healthy sense of purpose
Mm-hmm.
and then also thinking that the responsibility of everyone's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual well-being and growth is on you. That whole "you're the plan A and there's no plan B" actual words spoken over me. And again, things with good intentions and maybe that work for some people can be really damaging for others. So it's interesting that you bring that up because I see so much of that in my own journey as a big shift in how I think about mental health and progress and caring for people, um, is shifting from that very missional, everything's on me, and doing it perfectly, and oh, if I'm going through something, that means it's my fault, and learning that difference between like accountability for our own actions and choices
Mm-hmm.
versus, things that are outside of our control. So
And there's
it's,
so much outside of our control. There's all the conditioning from our own families of origin and our cultures that we grow up in, and other people's choices. And sometimes we're just victims of other people's choices. And we experience things that don't have anything, like we didn't cause it. It's not our fault. But I think, yes, that mindset of you put yourself there, you shouldn't have done this, you need to fix this within yourself. We do have a responsibility to get better and to work on ourselves and to work through things, but we also, it also is the truth that some things were not our fault, and we fell victim to somebody else's terrible choices.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that grace for ourselves is really, really powerful, and I love that you get that.
Yes, I love how you have shared that with me and taught that to me because there can be some things that you hear over and over again and they don't always click in you until a certain time or a moment, and then a certain person is saying that, and it's all about timing. Like when you were talking about how some people just don't want help. Some people aren't ready for help and for change. That's not where they're at yet. That's not where they're at in their journey. And like you said, progress is going to look slower in that situation. What do you feel like was a moment that sort of started to shift your perspective from we're all responsible for everything that's happening to us to kind of that broader, like, we are humans, life is messy, there are things in our control, there are things out of our control? Was that more of like a professional path, or was that also like personal experience? How do you feel like that started to shift for you?
When I had teenagers.
Ooh, I've heard that will do it.
Nothing will humble you like teenagers. My daughters are amazing. They're grown adults now, and they each have children, we have six grandbabies, and life is good. But it was hard when they were teenagers. It was really hard, and I think I worked at a Christian recovery program, and I was deeply involved in my church, and I did all the right things, and things at home were just messy. And I think when you grow up being conditioned in a certain religion, that things are supposed to look a certain way and things don't look that way, then you feel like you're constantly doing something wrong. And I think it's really important to understand that. I apologize for the dogs barking. I
Fine,
think
it's just
it's
real
real
life.
life over here. Yeah. I think it's important to just have grace for ourselves and understand that humans make choices, and teenagers are humans, and they are going to make choices that make you scratch your head and be like, what are you doing, child? And then you have to like help them clean up that mess. And so I remember a significant part of our journey. It was very, very traumatic with our oldest daughter. And I remember feeling extremely judged by other parents in our community. And I remember thinking, you have no idea what we're experiencing. You don't understand anything behind it. And I remember thinking, I've done this to people. I have looked at people like, what's going on in your home? Like, what is happening? You
Mhm.
can't keep your kid in check. What's the matter with you? And that was a very humbling experience because in that moment, in that season, I was just brought to my knees, literally and figuratively. And I thought I will never, and you never say never, but I will never judge people for what their family members are doing because we're all individuals. And I think up to that point, I had this really fundamental belief that whatever I influence them, they will do because that's how it works, right? But
Mhm.
then I just quickly realized that they are their own person and they're going to do things that don't match my values. And working through that and having grace for that and compassion and understanding and boundaries and all of the things that go with that. Um, yeah, it was a huge life lesson. Everything shifted at that point.
Yes. Yeah, I can see that. I think that's a big turning point for people is when they hit some moment where they realize the standards they thought were the standards,
Mm-hmm,
social, religious, cultural, family, whatever the expectation is,
mm-hmm,
that that's not the reality.
mm-hmm.
And that can be really uncomfortable. It really kind of rocks your world for a minute and you feel so confused.
Yeah.
It's like, is everything I know a lie?
Right.
You have this moment, and it's such an uncomfortable part of the growth process
Yeah.
and progress. And watching your kids go through those things, watching people judge it from the outside, and knowing that this is true for so many things in life, we don't really understand, we don't really have that compassion for something that someone's going through until we've experienced it ourselves.
Right on.
And that can be kind of the, I don't know, the pro and con of going through suffering and trials, I guess, is that you develop this greater capacity for compassion and empathy, grace, understanding, mercy, um, and also it hurts.
Mm-hmm,
So those are big pieces of the path of progress that can make people not really want to go down that road.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes it can be easier to ignore
Yeah.
the problems or hop on the bandwagon that the other people are on and pretend like that expectation is still the reality,
Yes.
even though your experience is telling you something differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're so right. I mean, people, when they look and they see situations like that, literally no one's going to sign up for that. No one's going to be like, oh, that looks like it could be really growth, a big growth opportunity. Let me sign up for all that pain I see you going through. It has to catch us off guard or we won't experience it. We will not allow ourselves to go through that typically. And I think it's really important to fundamentally believe it's also a beautiful thing. And you can't see that until hindsight, but it is an awakening of sorts. And I think about when you're asleep and you might just be kind of waking up and someone flips the light on. It hurts. It's like it hurts. Well, all of a sudden, like you have to adjust your vision, and now you can see clearer. It's the same
Mhm,
thing. It's like, this hurts, let me adjust. Oh, now I see. Now I see how
mhm,
things are better. Things had to go this way. If we hadn't gone through what we went through, I wouldn't have confronted my own codependencies and I wouldn't be able to help
mhm,
other people heal from their codependencies. And the kind of
mhm,
codependency that I had experienced or struggle with still to this day is the kind where you need to be needed. It's a very
mhm.
socially acceptable covert, is that the right
Yes.
word? Covert, like it's buried and it looks like you're
Yes.
being super helpful. It looks like you are a rock star, you are generous with your time and energy and everybody loves you and you get this need met that you don't even know you have because you're so busy doing all the things. And so that never would have gotten addressed had we not gone through what we went through. So I can look back and see these pockets of good things that came out of it, And now I can sit across from a mother going through the same thing and just like, girl, I get it. I get it. I know what you're going through. You're
Mhm.
feeling this, and this right now, aren't you? And they feel seen and heard and understood. And those are the things I didn't have back then. And so to be able to give those, I now look at everything as a gift. All adversity, all crappy things that we go through. It feels callous and insensitive to say this, but from my personal experience, it's a gift, because on the other side of that is this deep, deep understanding that you can offer someone to help them. And that's really what it's all about. We have these existential crises, like, what's the point of life? Why are we here? What are we even doing? Like, why did God even make us? I just had this conversation with a good friend of mine the other day. Like, why are we even, he didn't need us. Like, why are we here? And so there's this, this sense of like, I don't know. You get to the point where you throw your hands up and you're like, I have no clue. I don't have any answers, but I know that I love people, and I want to help them. I want to help them, ease some suffering in their life, even if it's just some mere understanding. So yeah.
Yes, I think you're exactly on track with that. One of my favorite Janelle isms that you say sometimes in our sessions is when you say that, this isn't happening to you, this is happening for you.
Yes.
Yes, I've been listening. I've been
Yes.
listening.
I know you do. I know you do.
So I love when you say that because there's so many things that, um, we really can feel like the victim of our circumstances, the victim of our biology, the victim of our social standing, family situation, whatever it is that, um, is just contributing to that feeling of victimization.
Mhm.
And to think instead, without invalidating the fact that, like, yeah, sometimes we really are the victims of things
Yeah.
that we don't have control over because there is so much we don't have control over.
Right.
Um, but instead of sitting in that space of, oh, why is this happening to me?
Hmm.
But you feel the feelings, you
Hmm.
don't push them away,
Right.
but going through it and saying, okay, how is this going to work for me and my
Hmm.
values? How is this going to shape me? How is this going to lead me to my next step?
Hmm.
And I think that's a really powerful perspective shift
Hmm.
that you have helped me with.
Yes.
That, and then, oh, what's the other one that I love? Rejection is protection.
Protection.
I love when you say that, because there are so many things that we just think, "Oh, those people are judging me and they don't like me and blah, blah, blah." Oh, no, that's protection because those aren't the people you want in your life.
For you. Hmm.
Or,
Yeah.
"Oh, I went to this job interview and I didn't get this job and I thought it was gonna be perfect for me." No,
Hmm.
that was some form of protection because
Hmm.
if their energy wasn't matching your energy, that's not a place you wanna be.
Yes.
So I love your little Janelle isms that you shout out during our interviews or
Aw,
sessions.
they are great. Sometimes I steal them and sometimes I come up with them. And that rejection is protection. Thought I was a genius there for a while. I was like, yes, this is great. Thank you, God. You dropped that in the spirit. Well, I just heard it the other day and I was like, oh, I guess I'm not the only one that says that. But so good. It's so good. I love
Right? Like, we're still gonna give you some cred for that, you
it.
know?
It just made sense to me at the time whenever I thought of it. But yeah, it
Yes.
really does eliminate a lot of the fear. If you can really get that belief in your spirit, like get it, let it sink into your bones and you carry that around and own that stuff. Like that belief right there, that one alone will eliminate a lot of fear when you try new things, when you try to be vulnerable. Like rejection is protection. And it's almost like you can really get excited about getting rejected because you're like, oh, good. Whew, I avoided that train wreck, like of a relationship or a job or whatever. Like, yes, thank you, God, for letting that happen. Because now that means I get to move on to the next thing and try that out. And eventually you're going to find the person, the job, the thing, the hobby, the whatever that really is what's meant for you. And I think that it becomes an exciting adventure rather than this fear-based, anxiety producing experience. Totally
Yes,
different perspective.
it's like that total concept of, showing up as your true self, your authentic self in
Mhm.
every way, in every part of life, and the right people and circumstances and things are going to kind of attract to that, and the
Mhm.
things that aren't on your same values, on your same priorities, all of those things, they're going to slide away. And it is a
Mhm.
very natural way of your circle forming,
Mhm.
and of everything else going off and finding its own circle, because, just because something's different than what you have doesn't mean that it's bad, but it just might not be for you. And
Right.
so I think that's very valuable concept. Embrace the rejection, because that just means that they aren't your people.
Exactly. Yeah, I think of that verse that's, I can't remember where it's at, but it says all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. You can do whatever the crap you want. Like if you want to go do something, go do it. But it doesn't, if you have an opportunity that comes your way or a relationship or a job or whatever, it's, you can do it. You have permission to do that thing if it's within, of course, moral and societal limits
Yeah.
or whatever. But is it beneficial? And the way to tell that is, does it match my values? Does it move me toward
Mhm.
my values? And it's really important to identify your core values so that you can have that answer ready in your back pocket. That is how you keep yourself from getting into situations. That's how we keep ourselves, because I practice this too, from getting into situations that are not good for us. They're just not, they're not
Yes.
helpful. And if we find ourselves inadvertently in a situation that's not good for us or not helpful, because sometimes we don't know that until we're in it and we're like, this does not feel good. I don't like this. You always have a choice to back out of that gracefully. So you can always decide, and the only way to figure that out is staying mindful and present and noticing, what's happening and being honest with ourselves. We have to be honest with ourselves. We can't pretend that everything's okay and that this is all right. And that's what I did for years, was pretend that it's okay for me to do all the
Mhm.
things for all the people. That's what I do. Like I'm an energizer bunny. I was known as that in my
Mhm.
family. I don't ever sit down. I don't ever stop moving. I don't ever stop helping. And you can't sustain that. You will crash and burn, and then you're no good to anybody, and then you're left
Yes.
wondering who the crap you are because you don't know what you are outside of that role. And that's the
Mhm.
place I got to when I moved to Florida, from Michigan to Florida. I had no people, I had no job, I had no kids around me, I had no grandkids with me. It was just me and my husband, and I'm like lost. I have no idea who I am outside
Mhm.
of being a helper. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with my time or my energy. My husband would get home every day, and I would sit down and give him a litany of everything I did. He was like, you don't have to tell me all the things you did today. And I'm like, but I do, because I feel
You're like,
really
"You don't have to justify how you
right.
spent your time." No, I so get that. I so get
Yes.
that.
Yes. That all the running around and doing all the things and staying busy, it's in service of something. And usually it's in service of avoidance, of avoiding real issues and growth and personal growth. Um,
Mhm.
and so really just being honest with ourselves and looking at that, I think is how we grow.
Yes. So I remember our very first session, and that's the very first thing that you had us do was, and I didn't even know you were doing it. You were just asking me questions about my life, things I liked to do, things I didn't like to do, places I liked to go, people who were important to me, all of these things. And little did I know, you are sitting there writing down a list of values based
Yeah,
off of the things that I said. And then you sent it to me, and I had that as the background on my phone for a long time, like months,
that's awesome.
because I just remember thinking, this is revolutionary. Like, I can sit there and look at my phone, and if I'm having a thought about something I should or shouldn't do or anything, and I can look at my values list and be like, "Okay, does that serve these? Nope. I'm out."
Yeah,
And then it didn't even
yeah.
have to be a, "Should I? Shouldn't I? The
Right.
debate was gone. It didn't match with my values, which means it's gonna go against my true self in some way. I'm not doing it,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, how do you suggest, because a lot of people don't do this. This isn't a thing that we're taught to do naturally, is like identify your five core values. How would you recommend someone go about, realizing what their core values might be?
It's a really good question. There's a couple ways you can do it. How I do it is the conversational way. So um, when we're talking and you're telling me what's important to you, and how you spend your free time and what makes you mad. Like what ticks you off. Okay. Those in there are your values. So if you say, oh, it makes me so mad when someone cuts me off in traffic, I just get road rage and I get so frustrated. Why? Because it's so disrespectful. Okay. So you value respect. Anytime you're angry about something, there's a value in there that's getting violated. So that's one way you can go through and kind of
Mhm.
pick out if someone's late all the time, and so you value promptness. That's a value of yours. And clearly that person doesn't, and they're always late. Um, you can also go through and look at what do you love, and it's never a material thing. A value is like a direction, so you can't get all the way east, you just keep going east. You can't get
Mhm.
all the way kind, you just keep being kind. And so kindness is a value. If someone says I value money, no you don't. You like to have money. Money is helpful to get to your values or move you in the direction of your values. What does that get you? And money will get you financial freedom, financial security, it'll get you status, success, whatever it is that you value, that's what you're using money for. So it's never a tangible item. You don't value your car is not a value. You might think it's important, but what does it do? It gets you to your job on time, work ethic. It gets you to all your friends' house, friendship. There's your value. It gives me independence. Independence is your value, freedom. Um, so you get the idea. So that you can sit and look at your life and look at the things that you do and the things you like and don't like. You can do it that way. Or you can print a list. You can go and Google a values list and you're going to get them. They're like 300 words, 500 words. I don't know why that's a thing because they're so redundant. Like there's a bazillion. So if
Yes.
you get one that's like 100 words, that's probably good enough. And you sit and you highlight all the ones that pop off the page at you that are important, very important to you. You highlight those. Then you go back through the highlighted ones and you find your top 6 to 10, 5 to 10, and these are your core values. These are the deal breakers. These are the lines in the sand that they're non-negotiables. If you value honesty and it's one of your top 5, you cannot be with a group of friends or a partner or a job where there's dishonesty that's consistent. You can't. You will It's not sustainable because that comes from your spirit. It's who you are. Your values are who you are. And they don't change. They might highlight in different seasons. Some might pop off the page bigger than others, but they don't change generally. And so really understanding those is your guidepost. And it does create this freedom to make choices that don't involve people pleasing, that don't involve guilt or shame. You might wrestle with a couple of really good values. I've had to do that before. I had to decide. I use this all the time. I use everything I preach, I use. I had to decide once, do I babysit my grandchildren or do I go to Bible study? And I was like, I don't know. I would enjoy both of them. Two really good values. It was hard. It didn't make it any easier. But then I don't remember what I chose, but I chose the one that made more sense based on what was happening in my life at that moment. And so it just gives you a grid to work from, and it takes away all the other stuff that's not helpful. When we get into people, are these people going to be mad at me because I didn't go to Bible study or whatever? It doesn't matter what people think. It might matter to you. You might think it matters, but it only matters because you allow it to matter. It doesn't have to matter, but it matters because you have nothing else to
Yes.
go from. Yeah, you've got nothing else to work from. So that becomes the deciding factor. And if you have values and you know what they are and you live them out every day and you move towards them as much as possible, that's what you use then. It replaces people pleasing and opinions of others, and it becomes core to who you are. And you know that creates trust in ourselves. We begin to trust ourselves. And when we trust ourselves, we make way better decisions, way better decisions. So
Yes.
that's why they're so important. It's a wonderful question. And I really encourage anybody listening to just sit down and make a list of your values and then find your core values and start operating in those, start moving towards those consciously.
Yes. Such good advice. That I feel like is a very foundational principle
Yes.
of progress and growth and just knowing that platform of where you're starting from.
One more thing I wanted to mention with that. We have values often that we don't move towards. So just because you're not currently moving towards them don't leave them off the list. If you're like, I really value work ethic, but I have not been operating in that space lately. And so you might think, oh, I shouldn't put that down because I'm not using it. You definitely should put it down. If it's important to you and it rings true in your heart and it sparks something in you, it goes on your list, but you might not be moving towards it. And that's a clue. It might be, ask yourself why? Why? Because maybe you don't like the job you have or the career that you're in or the people you work with or et cetera, et cetera. And so use it as an opportunity to explore why you're not moving towards that value. It could be trauma, it could be something else, who knows? But add it to the list, even if you're not moving towards it, just because it sparked something in you. So I want to clarify that.
Hmm. Yes, that is a good clarification. I think that makes me want to look at my list again
Yeah.
and double check myself. Like,
Yeah, it's a great thing to review once a
was
year.
I,
Yeah.
yeah, was I just self-judging? Like, oh, but I don't do that, so I shouldn't put it on here.
Right.
Or, is it really not actually one of my values? Very good advice.
Right. Yeah.
I now have some homework this week. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time, but I wanted to finish up by asking you one last question. What is one thing that you're working on,
Mhm.
personally, professionally, as a hobby, whatever, one thing that you're just kind of excited about right now, bringing you some joy in life?
I love this question because I have a thing. I might last couple weeks ago I might not have had a thing, but I am an artist. I am a painter. And so I have ignored that part of my life for a long, long time. And it was
Mm.
resurrected a couple years ago, and I've dabbled in it. My word for the year is decide. And so I made a decision, and that's a whole nother fun podcast,
Ooh,
the one word
yes.
for the year. But I decided to sign up with a company that helps you market your artwork. And so I'm getting a website built and I am going to start that whole process. And I'm just painting my little heart out right now. So I have some inventory. And I'm so excited because it feels like this new adventure and the opportunities are limitless. The whole world is full of things to paint. And so I'm just super, super excited. The name of it is Eremos Fine Art. Eremos is the Greek word for quiet place. It's the place where you go to
Mm.
retreat and go inward and reflect. And I just absolutely love that's what art is for me. It's time to just unhook from all of the brain work that we do and just it comes
Mhm.
from my spirit. And so I feel more whole doing this. I feel like part of me has been missing for so long, and I probably filled that up with doing all the things for the people. So I'm excited to have that balance in my life. And I feel like when we walk through something, when we grow in an area, it levels up our ability to help others. And so I'm just imagining that how that's going to translate into counseling, just teaching people and
Mhm.
helping people reach the things in their lives they've been ignoring, their gifts and callings and purpose. So I'm geeked about this. The website should be up and running within the next month or two. I'm trying not to have a lot of pressure on myself, but whenever it happens, it's going to be amazing. So
I absolutely love this. I'm so excited for you
thank
because I've
you.
seen some of your artwork in the background sometimes during sessions, and I'm always like, "Oh, did you do that?" And you're like, "Yeah, I was just, dabbling around the other day." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, these are your dabbles?" Like, that's beautiful.
Oh,
So,
thank
I'm
you.
very excited about this. I'm excited to see your website when it comes out. Please let me know, and I would love to have some Janelle James artwork in my home. So that's fabulous. And
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for coming on, for being a part of my show, for
Welcome.
encouraging me just as a person in my journey, and also for being such a huge supporter of this whole project.
Yes.
Um, and, hopefully maybe we'll get to have you on again sometime.
Wonderful. I would love that. I'm so proud of you. I love this whole idea, and you were made for this. Like, you are so good at just explaining things and talking from your heart and being vulnerable and open. And the world needs this. I told you that from the beginning. The world needs your words. So keep doing it.
Thank you. I know I remember when you said that one of the, big pushes for this was when you said, "If you don't write a book, I'm gonna have a crisis.
Right.
And I started to write by, like, sitting down thinking about how I'd plan out a book, and I was like, "It's too much. I'm gonna do a podcast."
Whatever. Just get your words out there.
Yes. So, thank
Oh,
you, and
welcome.
yeah, I will talk to you soon, I'm sure,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
yeah, good luck with all your paintings, your projects, and just enjoying life.
Thank you so much. You take care. We'll talk to you
Yeah.
soon.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Imperfect Progress. Click follow to stay up to date with each new release and share this podcast with someone you care about today. Join us next week for another adventure in imperfection, and remember, beautiful, there's no one path of progress.